Canada is not the only country boycotting America. Australia has added to it.
If you're an American, is this good news or bad news that the rest of the world is hedging?
It's very bad news.
Why?
What you're watching is everybody all over the world hedging. Everybody is looking for alternatives. A lot of America's prosperity in the post-war period has been based on the fact that America was dominant in global trade. And, we make money out of our European relationships. Will U.S. goods go on being so valued? In Canada, they boycott U.S. products now. And actually, this was when I was in Denmark in February. I was shown an app that you can take a picture of a thing you see in the supermarket and it will tell you whether it's made in the United States. And if it's made in the United States, you don't buy it because they were so angry.
Consumers in Canada and Europe have engaged in boycotts of American goods, all in response to the recent actions from those federal agents. And now some foreign officials and activists are threatening to do the same to their own companies that do business in the U.S.
So I think we can help Canada in this trade war by also boycotting red states.
There's a trend right now in Europe of ditching American products. No Coca-Cola, no Oreos, no Philadelphia cream cheese. That's because the Trump administration is making it more expensive for Europe to sell things to the U.S., possibly hurting European businesses. Here in Germany, this many people said they'd rather not buy American products right now. There's apparently a trend right now of Europeans boycotting American products because the Trump administration is making it more expensive for Europe to sell things to the U.S. But are people really boycotting, and what are they giving up?
McDonald's and Starbucks and Burger King also. But I don't think it's difficult to boycott.
No, I hate Amazon. I don't have any Apple devices. I don't have Netflix. If I buy clothing from American companies, it's always secondhand. Start paying more attention when he goes to power.
An app that helps people avoid American products just became the #1 download in Denmark this week, ranked above ChatGPT. In Canada, shoppers are turning U.S. products upside down on store shelves so other customers can spot and avoid them. Norway stopped supplying fuel to U.S. Navy ships. France is canceling Tesla orders. And this isn't fringe activism from a few angry consumers. This is a coordinated, technologically enabled boycott movement spreading across America's closest allies, backed by apps, government officials, and unprecedented public support.
Canada and the Commonwealth countries that are trying to ban or have been boycotting our American goods and services. Please understand that not all the Americans here agree with what the Tangerine Man in the White House is doing, okay? This administration does not speak for all of the people of the United States. Now, Canada, I'm speaking to you directly because I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of comments about how pissed off you are. And I understand because I can appreciate what you've been going through and how you've been treated, because I can't imagine doing all of the things that Canada has done for the United States over the decades and yet be hit with tariffs within 30 days of coming to the aid of the wildfires of California. We have inflation issues here. We have so many things that are basically stripping us of the basic necessities of life. And here, one of the allies who has helped us through all of this is being treated horribly.
Donald Trump, thank you for causing the Canadians to boycott the United States. I thought you said you were a smart businessman, Donald Trump. When you cause your customers not to come and buy your product, to travel to your country, that is not a wise decision. It only costs the American workers money. That is not a smart thing to do. They are boycotting all American products and they're boycotting travel to the United States. Thanks to your wisdom to tariff Canada, and thanks to your wisdom to constantly joke about making Canada the 51st state. They're not interested. It's not going to happen. All you've done is turn our closest ally and closest friend into somebody that does not like us, will not buy American products, and will not travel to the United States because of you. You, Donald Trump. So when you see your bills to Canadians drop because they don't buy our products, they're not buying Coca-Cola, they're not buying Campbell's soup, they're not buying Frito-Lay, they're not buying Lay's potato chips, they're not buying Apple, they're not traveling here, thanks to Donald Trump. So if you work in these business and industries, travel and tourism, you can thank Donald Trump when it slows down. Thank you, Donald Trump. You are such a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant person.
Overnight, I've received quite a few sneers and sniggers about my decision to boycott things made in the USA. Mainly, it seems, from Americans themselves, as this person has also noted. When you say those words, you will make no difference. You say them to an Australian. And from gold miners' rebellions in Ballarat to futile fights on literal battlefields abroad, Australian history is endowed with noble defeats in futile battles. We almost take pride in their futility because it's in those moments that we demonstrate most clearly to our mates. In this case, Canada, Mexico, Europe, most of the rest of the non-USA world. However grim things look, whatever the overwhelming odds you face, you will not face them alone. When a Canadian looks over their shoulder, searching for the last person standing by their side, that person will be an Australian. And on a personal note, I have this standard. I will not be complicit in the tyranny of the USA. And this standard that lives in my mind now lives in the real world through my actions. Literally, I will not buy into the tyranny of the USA. And this feels right, just as it feels right for others, evidently, too. Because when this is over one way or another, I want my name to have been recorded in my memory, if nowhere else, in the column of the names of the people who said I will not be complicit, and not among the names of those who sneered or sniggered, or worse, who cheered the tyrant on.
Like, they're literally asking, I believe that's a Swedish flag, how do we not know? How do we not know about, nobody importing our stuff? Well, it's because our media is silent about it. Our president is talking about how our economy is fixed and how people are begging to do trade with us. And, yeah, our media is totally silent about Europe and other countries boycotting us. The thing is some of our largest trade partners are Europe and Canada, so if they're not taking our goods, we're just losing money. And with the fact that nobody's going to be sending us goods either because nobody's going to pay the man's tariffs, I think people really need to just start waking up that, well, yeah, no. Again, Americans don't know. Americans don't know. A lot of Americans don't believe it. A lot of Republicans will say this isn't real, or they'll say we don't need you guys, which the rest of us know we need you, and we don't like this. Everyone who didn't vote for Trump doesn't like this. We don't want this. But we're stuck. We can't leave. We literally can't leave.
So we're boycotting America. Easy to say, far harder to actually do. America being the most capitalist cunty country of them all means that it has monopolized pretty much every industry ever. But there are ways to make sure that your hard-earned cash is not lying in the pockets of the terrorist state. First up, stocks, ISAs, pensions. Stocks and shares, ISAs, amazing way of making money on your savings. However, a lot of them are tied to US companies, particularly BlackRock. BlackRock is the world's biggest asset manager. And guess what it invests heavily in? US defense contractors, surveillance tech, Israeli companies and settlements. If you want to make sure that your ISAs and your pensions aren't invested in things like that, there are ways to go about it, such as free trading. That's where you can choose what companies and what countries you want to invest in. You've also got Trading 212, which is an app that lets you exclude US stocks. The best option because it still does operate in Israel, but at least you have a little bit more freedom of choice there. You can choose instead to invest your money in renewable energies or cooperatives. Obvious change that you can make is the streaming sites. Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Amazon Prime especially, or Amazon as an entity, pure evil. Try and step away from it if you can. I would offer alternatives here, but honestly, I just think that we should just get back into reading. And then obviously just avoiding the big chains like McDonald's, Domino's, Starbucks, all US owned. Support local businesses instead. We should all be doing this anyway. Ethical consumption is not going to save the world immediately, but it is definitely a good way to start. And the best way to wage war against America is by using the thing that it loves the most. Money, money, money. Let me know your ideas in the comments and please follow me for more.
Heard that Europeans were boycotting American products, and I'm not here to stop you doing that. I'm telling you that if you want to boycott American products properly, you're gonna have to boycott Apple and Microsoft computers and embrace open source with Linux. You're gonna have to ditch your Apple iPhones and go get yourself something like a Fairphone and install EOS and de-Google it completely. If you have a Pixel phone already, consider installing Graphene OS. You're gonna have to really step away from a lot of American companies and embrace more open source. I applaud this decision by any means necessary to get more people into open source, but this is the reality of the situation. Apple and Microsoft are two of the largest companies in the United States of America, and if you really don't want to support that and you want to embrace freedom, well then you gotta embrace free, libre, and open source software. That is just the rule of thumb here. So, go out there, check out all the open source projects, and consider hopping on to Linux and de-Googling today.
This may actually surprise some people, but a CTV News survey, which is looking at Canadians boycotting US goods, services, and travel, have actually found that the number of people boycotting these things is actually increasing. They found out that in September 2025, the number of Canadians polled who would boycott US goods, services, and also travel was 56%. They did the similar survey again in May 2026, and the number had increased by 10% to 66%. So that's a 10% increase of Canadians who are refusing to travel to the United States, choosing to buy products from other countries other than the United States, or not using US-based services.
This is not the first time I've seen this. On multiple videos now, I've had people be like, Europeans are boycotting America. How do Americans not know?
Don't travel to the U.S. and don't buy American goods. I understand the gravity of that request coming from me. And I fully understand that there are a lot of people that can't do it. So let me explain myself. If you're watching this and you don't know who I am, I'm an American who's living abroad in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and one who is fearing for the state of the states at the moment. But as the world watches the states, there is a sense of absolute disgust with what's happening. And there's a sense of hopelessness and futility as we watch the United States of America become the Democratic People's Republic of America. This is something that we can do to directly affect what's going on. First is, don't travel to the states. This is especially true if you are not a white person. I hate to say it that way, but it is very true. Migrant hate is at an all-time high. And just watching it and hearing the stories, I do not feel like it's safe for you guys to go. But besides that, if you go to the States, all the money that you spend on that holiday eventually goes back into the economy and then supports the administration. Because all that revenue earned on tourism gets taxed. And all that tax money goes straight to you-know-who. Another thing that we can do here is to boycott American goods. I know that that's a big ask. In some places, that's not going to be as big an issue because they're getting tariffed and all these goods are becoming so expensive you don't want to buy them anyway. But in a place like Aotearoa, the tariffs don't necessarily affect us as much here. So some American goods are going to be cheaper, especially when we're having kind of a cost of living crisis here. But where you have the option, please try to avoid American goods if you can. I'm just as guilty of this. There's so many vices I have that come out of the States. But one of the only things you can do is hit them in the pocket. One of the main reasons that he got in was on promises of making things cheaper and more affordable and creating American jobs. All while completely forgetting that his biggest donors, that the biggest part of American industry comes from world trade and international money.
When looking at the broader picture of what is happening today, it becomes clear that this issue is no longer just about tariffs or trade tensions between Canada and the United States. It has evolved into a larger test of how nations respond when economic relationships come under pressure and the political environment becomes increasingly unpredictable. On one side, supporters of this strategy argue that this is precisely the objective of economic restructuring. They believe that accepting short-term disruptions is necessary to bring manufacturing back home, rebuild industrial capacity, and gradually strengthen the country's position and influence on the global stage. On the other side, however, are the realities unfolding right now. Businesses are being forced to adapt quickly, supply chains are being reorganized, and the burden of rising costs is falling directly on workers, farmers, and small businesses, groups that cannot afford to wait years to see the results of long-term strategies. At the center of this debate lies a question that still has no clear consensus. Will this approach genuinely make the United States stronger in the future, or will it encourage key allies and trading partners to gradually reduce their dependence on the American market over time? That is the fundamental issue being debated today. The story is far from over. Events continue to evolve day by day. Many uncertainties remain, and the final outcome is still taking shape before our eyes. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. In your opinion, is this a necessary adjustment to rebalance the economy, or is it a high-risk gamble that could lead to even greater consequences in the future? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this analysis helpful, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join our community as we continue discussing Canada, the United States, and the major developments shaping global politics and economics. Thank you all for taking the time to watch. Your support means a great deal to this channel. I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.